Good evening. Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing? Nice to have you all here. Thanks for being here. Yes, clap, clap. Welcome to the National Book Festival. It's great to be back in person. I'm glad to see everyone. And welcome to our panel, Thieves and Their Petty Little Secrets. We are here with our wonderful, amazing authors, Chelsea Abdullah, pronouns she, her, and our lovely other author, M.J. Kuhn, also she, her. So if you guys love bad guys, secrets upon secrets upon secrets, and Doom, definitely Doom. And if you're into anime and you've seen Magi or Psychopaths, this panel, yes, definitely for you. So without further ado, I am your lovely moderator. My name is Ashley Dickerson. I work for the Library of Congress. I am an acquisitions and cataloging specialist for Finland and the Baltics. And on my free time, I'm a cosplayer and a person who loves pettiness, so Thieves is right up my alley. So before we get started with this panel, I would love to give an honorary mention to all of our lovely sponsors of the science fiction and fantasy stage. So starting off with General Motors, David Rubenstein, and all our other lovely sponsors. At the end of the event, there will be a Q&A session, and there will be mics presented in the audience, so when the time comes, I will let you guys know. So please think of all of your great questions during the lovely discussion, and come up and ask our authors a little bit of everything. Somewhat, keep it clean, please. So, and the authors, they will have a signing between 1 and 2 p.m. Chelsea, I believe, is in line 11, and MJ will be in line 12. So, let's get started. Yay. So both of you have created perfectly evil, well-layered villains. Chelsea, Omar, I have beef. And MJ, Clem, I refuse to say his first name.
Fair.
And my friend, she wants to cosplay Omar because I told her about his outfit in the silver. I'm not gonna spoil it, don't worry. I'm not gonna tell you guys, but yes. So with that said, how did you guys create your respective villains? So what was the thought process, inspiration? Did they scare you and bother you after you created such a diabolical person?
Yeah, well, I'll kick it off. So the hardest thing for me about writing a character like Callum Clem is that he's a lot smarter than I am, which makes it difficult because I have to write, what he's doing and thinking, which can be challenging. So yeah, I had to do a lot of character building. I do a thing where I interview my characters as I'm building them, where I'll just kind of pepper them with random questions. Some of them, deep, like if you could choose a way to die, and some of them are like, what's your Starbucks order, right? Things that won't be relevant, but I just really feel like I need to get inside their head and feel like I kind of know what makes them tick. So yeah, that's basically how Clem came to be in a roundabout way.
I just want to say I think he's the most conniving person, so you did a very good job making him awful. Yes. So I feel like I'm the exact opposite. So instead of planning everything, I kind of have a very general concept of what I want to do with my characters. For Amar, I thought, okay, I want to make this king of the 40 thieves because, my story takes inspiration from the 1001 Night Tales, specifically the versions that I heard growing up. So I had this concept of, okay, I want to make this king of the 40 thieves, and I'm going to see how that plays out on the page. And I started with this concept. One of the biggest things, one of the biggest pieces of lore that my world revolves around is this concept of the jinn and how the jinn are treated in this world. And there are jinn hunters in this world, people who hunt jinn for their blood, which revitalizes the land, and they also steal jinn magic. And so, there's a lot of morals and ethics and all of these, different perceptions of whether the jinn are evil or not. And, the truth of the matter is that the jinn are just like humans. They can be bad, they can be good, they can be either of those things. But the king of the 40 thieves is a jinn hunter. And so I knew that going into the story, I knew that he would be a hunter. But in terms of coming up with his personality, I sort of let that come to me on the page, which is what I do with all of my characters. They kind of show me the way as I go through the story, and that's what feels most authentic to me.
So what would be his Starbucks order?
Oh, wow.
If not, like, drink of choice. Because I'm curious about Clem.
I mean, I feel like it would just be the plainest, blackest coffee.
Yes.
That from
Just-
her. Yeah.
He deserves nothing less.
And
but
like
black
just for appearances, you know?
Oh, he doesn't get sugar. He doesn't get anything nice. I saw what he did. No, not allowed. So we'll stay with that for a second because I do want to jump into Stardust Thief, and then obviously we'll bounce to MJ. You feel necessary to jump in, by all means. So one of the things I loved so much about Stardust were the pops of storytelling and the oral stories. So in your book, there were, clear pages that looked like parchment, which were amazing, looked like scrolls like left by, and they had really cool folklore and tales. And there was one tale in particular that really stuck out to me. It was the tale of Safia. And it says, and the quote was, "Humans are the ones who decide when the legacies die." So in your world, jinn are painted to be, they're revered, but they're also creatures that need to be destroyed and eliminated by any means. And to me, there was a shift throughout the book where there were pops of the jinn taking their narrative back, or telling or saying, "Oh, this is not true. Humans created this." Or you had, I don't want to say jinn sympathizers because that seems weird, but people like Luli who were more, "No, that's not always the case," because we know her connections. Again, I'm trying so hard not to spoil it. But to get back on track, how important was it for you to weave their humanity back into their own storytelling, give them power to tell their own stories?
So I think that's one of the biggest sort of themes of Stardust, is how stories change depending on who it is that's telling the story. So if you have a story, that's told by the people who are, hunting the jinn, then of course the narrative is going to change. They're going to paint the jinn as being these villainous entities. Whereas, by giving the jinn the opportunity to tell those stories, then of course the narrative switches. And I think that's the nature of storytelling in general. And also kind of, just the idea behind history itself. History is always told by, sort of the winners, or the people who are, the colonizers and whatnot. So in the Stardust Thief, I wanted to give the characters the opportunity to tell the stories from different perspectives, to show that, stories can be truths, but they can also be lies. And, they can tell you the truth about a situation, but they can also be propaganda as well. Mm-hmm. And, throughout the story, most of the characters that you meet sort of in the general world do believe that the jinn are villainous entities. The main character, Luli al-Nazadi, has a bodyguard who is a jinn. And so her perception of what the jinn are is obviously very different. And so that's something that I definitely wanted to play with throughout the story. Mm-hmm. And I think throughout the series as well, just this idea that, stories are power, stories are powerful. And depending on who it is that's telling the story, that can have serious repercussions on our culture.
She spoiled it, not me. I did my job. So to bounce that to MJ, because I feel your story also relates to the same thing, where Nash, she has a sister who, in your world, you can explain this too, I'm just going to drop it. Nash has a sister who is a magic user or an adept, and she was taken away. And there are pops in the story where she tells, like, "No, adept need to do this," or adept are people too. And you have Ryia, who also does something similar, because she has her own past with adept, and she humanizes them. She never refers to them as objects or it. She says he, she, they. She sees them as people still, even though their eyes and how they're treated, not so much.
Yeah. So the magic system in Among Thieves is, it's pretty dark. It's A little bit. So essentially, there are magic wielders, and when they are born, they are hunted down by a man named the Guildmaster and stolen away as infants to be raised and brainwashed on his island, and then sold to the highest bidder as a magical slave. And they are very emotionless, they're blank, because they've just been brainwashed from infancy. And it is a dark system of magic. I feel that it's a fear response from the society in Timor that, not everyone can wield magic, so let's try to shackle the ones that can so that, we don't have to be afraid of them. And it's been part of the society for so long that they are dehumanized by the majority of the characters, in even some of the characters that we like, that we hear from, which is complicated. But several of my characters do, like Nash understands. She had an infant sister that was taken, so she's constantly thinking about, is this adept my sister? And that humanizes, it gives a direct connection, and Ryia has a connection as well. And I think it's important, it was important for me in writing the story that throughout the tale, you see more of the characters begin to come around and see as they learn more, because you don't know what you don't know. And if all you know is that this is the way the adept have been presented to me my entire life, and I don't have any direct, connection to it, as you learn more, they're willing to open their minds and begin to realize that they've been wrong, which is important. So,
awesome. So, just going to dive into yours. Who is your favorite character, and why is it Ryia? I'm speaking for me, solely for me, because I'm already planning to cosplay her myself because battle axes, because I need battle axes. But professional, my bad. Back to what we were talking about. So I know she's one of the main characters, so a lot of the focus, tends to be towards her, but I do really enjoy her. I love that she's sarcastic. I love that she's vulgar. I love that she's brash. Murderous femme-presenting character that everyone aspires to be. Like, just that. But in later bits of the story, she does become more reflective about her behavior. She does, show that she can be a little vulnerable, especially with Evelyn. And I wanted to know, with characters like Ryia, because, when we think of thieves, we always think, oh, they're bad, they're terrible. We'll double back around to that. But we think they're terrible, they're vulgar, they're probably the worst people on earth. But you have characters like Ryia who, at the first, yes, she showed that because she cut a dude's finger off. But she came back with feeling guilty about hurting people and thinking more about her actions to, instead of, oh, I could just kill this person, but I'm not going to, I'm going to do something else. How did you go about creating the balance in making her character, balancing out the villainy, but yet also keeping a little bit of humanity, her slowly accepting that she is changing in her own way?
Yeah, so for the entire story of Among Thieves, redemption was like a really important theme that I wanted to explore. Because the characters in Among Thieves, they're not, at the beginning, they're largely not good people. There's a lot of backstabbing and betrayal before. So much. Yeah. It's like the
oh my God.
Because they've all been in this situation or their various situations for so long that they have to look out for number one, and that's the only thing that they really know. And I think for Ryia specifically, without giving too much of her story away, her darkness and her willingness to commit evil acts comes from the fact that she genuinely believes that she is broken. She believes she cannot be saved and she's not worthy of saving. And it's only when she begins to actually form bonds with people and starts to realize that maybe she's not broken after all, and she starts to kind of soften and realize that maybe, the way that she's been living is not the only way that she's able to live.
Because the power of friendship saves all.
It does. We need like rainbow emojis here.
It's like, we're a family. Why do I care about this person? Why do I care about this person?
Yes.
Oh my.
That's her internal monologue, like the whole book.
This is why we love found family.
Exactly, exactly. So to toss it back to Chelsea, because we do love thieves, and you have a few lovely debauchable thieves in yours as well. So do talk about your thieves and how you changed, the trajectory of your thieves. How, we know who the Stardust Thief is.
Yeah, so I mean, I think one of the most interesting things to me, when people come to me after they've read the story, and I will not say who the Stardust Thief is, but people, but people always come to me and say, "Oh, so that's the Stardust Thief." So they have this idea of who the thief is going into the story, and then it turns out to be someone completely different. And that's actually one of the things that I really love about the title, and one of the reasons I think the title has stuck around is that concept of thief applies to so many of the different characters, even if they aren't all technically thieves. One of them is, one of the main characters is a seller of rare magics on the black market. And so, in some ways, she's kind of a thief. We have, the villain, Ahmad, the king of the 40 thieves, who is obviously a thief. You have Aisha, who's another one of the main characters who is also kind of the thief that joins the characters on their journey through the desert to find this ancient relic. And then you have one character who is, in some people's eyes, kind of a thief, but he's not actually a thief. Again, don't want to say too much just because that one is a bigger spoiler. But so I love playing with this concept of, I think, seeing external versus internal, so how the characters see themselves versus how everyone else sees them. And I think, the title of thief is kind of thrown around a lot throughout the story because there are a lot of thieves, but also because people see thievery in different ways. And so, of course, the way the characters see themselves is completely different. Ahmad is a thief. He's also a hunter of jinn. And he thinks he's justified in what he does.
Too justified.
Yes. And, there are a lot of people who think that as well about him. But then there are people who, look at his title as King of the 40 Thieves and see that as villainous, So I really like to play, and this is kind of something that I do throughout, I think all of my work. I like to play with this concept of this is how people are seen through the stories that other people tell about them, versus these are the stories that they tell about themselves. And so this is how, this is where you see that sort of distortion behind, what we might see in them as a thief versus why they think they are justified in being a thief.
That's awesome. And I just noticed you have your book as earrings.
Yeah, thank you.
Right?
Subtle things I love.
Super cute.
So one big element in both of your respective books, of course, was the commodification of magic. So we can talk about that for a bit. Let's just dive into that. So in both of your books, you approach how magic is commodified differently, but there are similarities. I don't look at gardens the same way, and I have lemon balm in my bag because we're not running the written.
Gotta be ready.
Always. So break down the importance of magic in your respective books, the politics behind it, the social implications, capitalism, the ups and downs. Go for it. We'll start with MJ.
Rock, paper, scissors. No, so the whole society of Timor, the world behind Among Thieves, is built on the commodification of the magic, right? There are kingdoms in Timor, and there are kings and there are queens, but they have some power, but they don't have real power, and that's mentioned several times in the book because the person that has the real power is the guild master, the one that is capable of, providing the magic to all the kingdoms. I think that, yeah, I mean, I mentioned a little bit earlier that it's when not everyone was capable of wielding magic, and they were able to buy it instead. That was the choice that the kingdoms made in the past, and it's to the point. Another piece that I've had several folks mention to me that they found interesting about Among Thieves is, a lot of fantasy novels are centered around war, and not only is there not a war in Among Thieves, but the war is not possible in this world because the guild master has outlawed war, and if any kingdom attempts to begin a war, they are cut off from receiving a debt, and that king will be ousted and taken out of power. So it's, you know, a cold war among all the kingdoms, basically. And that just, I think, shows how much power the magic system has in the world of Timor. So, yeah.
And I mean, I love the way you incorporated the magic into your political system in your book.
Me too.
We're all just fans here. Yeah, no, so as I was saying before, magic, especially jinn magic, because that is where magic comes from in this world, is sort of one of the foundational, pieces of lore, pieces of world building in the Stardust Thief. And I think in a sort of similar way, the jinn are kind of objectified by what people can give them. And I mean, people think of their magic in terms of like literal objects as well. There are jinn magics, in the form of objects that you can buy on the black market. And so people are not really thinking about, the lives of the jinn who are stolen, in order to get this, this magical relic from a jinn. You're going to have to steal it from them, or you're going to, have to kill them. People aren't really thinking about that in this world. I mean, some people are, but on the whole, they're thinking, oh, well, this is a magic from a jinn, and I'm, what can I use this magic for? So they're objectifying the jinn in that way. And, they're also thinking about jinn blood in that way as well, because jinn blood, revitalizes this very barren desert world. And so, there's this idea of, well, the jinn need to be sacrificed in order to make this, in order to revitalize the world. And so people think, this is a just sacrifice. The story, begins with this tale, the tale of the jinn, and, it sort of sets up this foundational lore that the jinn were, the jinn were the first creatures in the world, but then they overused their magic and, blasphemed against the gods, and so they were punished. And so, because people think, oh, well, these jinn were punished by the gods, and because they were punished by the gods, the world is the way that it is, we have the right to kill them and, to revitalize the land with their blood. It's all very twisted and awful. But of course, the characters, the main cast, they all come from very different perspectives of how they view the jinn. But they are constantly reevaluating what these morals look like and what these, what this lore and what these stories look like as you go through the novel.
I don't want to gab too much how much I loved your books, but I loved your books. And one of the things I really did stuck with was reading the femme presenting characters. So we have Luli, we have Nash, we have Ryia. I love how there was a lot of variety of not just personality, but a lot of traits. You had someone who was strong, you had someone who, had vulnerability. There was a breakdown, but they didn't let that breakdown define them in Luli near the end. Again, I'm trying so hard not to spoil, but I want to. So when you created these femme presenting characters, what was it your intention to make them, I don't want to say make them multi-layered, because obviously, duh. But what was your intention behind making all of them as well-rounded as they were, showing some aspects of femininity, but also showing very strong, headstrong independence, especially in the face of adversity?
I'll start with this one.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it always comes down to making the characters people. So, I never really go in thinking, oh, I want this, female character to present this way. I always start, well, first of all, I kind of start with nothing because I'm a pantser. So I have I have a concept of where I want to go with the character, but then I let the characters show me who they are on the page. But I think for me, coming back to this idea of making sure my characters feel human, one thing that I like to explore is, vulnerability. So I have all of these characters most of the cast, I'd say, kind of start, off feeling very confident. They present as very confident people. Luli is this, black market merchant, so she's very cocky, and like people, she's kind of legendary, so of course she lets it get to her head.
She's amazing.
And then you have Aisha, who is, a djinn hunter and a thief, and people are kind of terrified of her. So so she also has a reputation. So you have these, these two women who are, who have this reputation, who have reputations for very different reasons. And so they kind of start off in this high place almost. But then as the story goes along, and I think this is true of the entire cast, they start, that line between the stories that are told about them versus the stories that they're telling themselves about who they are, they kind of collapse and break down. And so, especially with Luli, she constantly hears all these rumors about herself on the market. People are always talking about how legendary she is, and she's this incredible merchant. And so that becomes a part of her identity. But then, as the story goes along, I keep saying around, as things keep happening in the story, she is forced to examine what she thinks about herself. And so those walls continue to deteriorate. And so I think that is something that I have happen for the entire cast. They all have these moments of fragility and vulnerability, where they're at their weakest, of course. But then, again, they start off as being these very sort of confident characters who think they know who they are. But then, it turns out when everyone is put under strife and, in these really intense situations, and when, these secrets, there are multiple secrets in this story, when they start coming to light, they have to re-examine things about themselves. And so for me, as a writer, I always want to be able to give my characters that space to examine those things about themselves, those perceptions that other people have about them, but also, I want them to be able to have the space to examine their own identities as well. And I think especially for my female characters, because I think we see a lot of really strong, powerful female characters, which is great, but I also want them to have that space to be able, to be weak and to be, to be fragile and vulnerable with other people. And, again, I say all the time that I really like exploring that because I think to be vulnerable is to be human. And so I like examining how each of the characters reacts differently to that vulnerability and how they express that. And I think that's, something that I think about for sure with my female characters, but just in general, as a writer, I like to give all my characters that space.
I love that. Kind of a similar energy that I have with mine. So I have three main female characters in Among Thieves. We have Ryia, we have Evelyn, and we have Nash. And they're pretty radically different characters, but I'll focus on Ryia since she is our most main character. I think for Ryia, that's not her real name. So, it's kind of difficult. She is not vulnerable. She's very closed off. She isn't even honest with who she is to herself in the beginning, for sure. So I think that makes it very fun to make a very layered character because, even though I do all of this prep work up front to try to build my characters, I'm going to sound a little like a crazy person here, but when I'm interviewing Ryia, she wasn't talking to me because she's so closed off. So it was, as I was drafting it out, I kind of had to peel back those layers as myself, kind of discovering it through the writing as a reader would discovering it through the reading. But yeah, I think when I'm creating my characters, whether I'm creating a female character or a male character, or a character of any gender, I think that, like you said, you just got to focus on making them human, and everybody has strengths and weaknesses and vulnerabilities, regardless of their circumstance or anything about them. So just remembering that just really helps make it more well-rounded.
I have love for you. So since we're winding down, this is probably such a cliche question considering that what I'm about to ask is like included in the title of one of your books. In your respective stories, is there honor amongst thieves? I had to do it, I love puns.
I love it, I love it. Yeah, I'll start, because it's funny because there are 2 iterations of that old chestnut, right? There is no honor among thieves and honor among thieves. And I purposely kept my title so that it's ambiguous as to which I mean. So I guess you'll have to read to find out.
Love, because your story, because I loved how in your story there was, at first everyone was all for themselves, everyone backstabby, but then there's a hint of, near the end, we're thinking about each other. Why are we thinking about each other? And it's like, because you're family, you're becoming family.
Just accept it, you have feelings, it's okay.
It's okay to like each other. And then of course, more backstabbing, as thieves.
You know, old habits die hard.
Truly. And
Yeah, I'm gonna say for me, it depends on which thieves you're talking about in the story, because I feel like there are many of them, depending on what your definition of thief is.
oh, absolutely. And now to get to technical questions, we'll start with MJ because you brought it up again, interviewing your characters. For those who are interested in writing, those who are curious about the writing process, what do you mean by interviewing your characters? And what is your process with that?
Yeah, so actually I think this is funny, and when we were talking a little bit beforehand, I think for like talking about the craft, we have a really fun panel here because Chelsea and I are on complete opposite ends of the spectrum of writing, which is so fun because everyone does it differently, and I always say there's no wrong way to write a book as long as it works for you. So I'm really intense on the plotting side. I like to really plan out all my characters, all my plot beats, everything. I use Microsoft Excel to do my plotting. It's intense.
Incredible to me.
You're like, this is my nightmare. But yeah, so when I interview my characters, I'll just get a list of 40 questions or so, and I will literally sit down and I will ask them inside my head to each of my characters, especially the ones that I'm writing points of view from, but especially if there's a more minor character that I feel like is going to have a lot of page time. I'll ask them the questions as well. And then the trick is you answer the question in their voice. So instead of just, what's your name? And then they say it. When I asked Ryia, what's your name? She said, who's asking? Why would I tell you, right? So you answer it as though the character is actually answering your questions. And it's very helpful for getting to know the characters, understanding what what their emotional arc might look like, but also it's so helpful when you get to writing dialogue because then you already know their voice, you already have it, and if you kind of feel like you've lost the thread of what their voice sounds like, you just go back and read the interviews that you wrote down. So yeah, that's my little pro tip.
Thank you for that. And Chelsea, what is your writing process for your characters? How do you come up with your dialogue? How do you come up with world building? Because Sansi was amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said before, I'm, a pantser. I like to tell people I'm a discovery writer, and then it sounds cooler. Sounds like I know what I'm doing a little bit more, I think. But I think for me, what I tend to do is, so I usually go in with sort of big concepts in mind. So, for this story, I had sort of a trajectory. I knew, okay, I want these characters to find this magical lamp. I knew that was going to be sort of the crux of the story. I knew who the main characters were, and I knew what the very first scene of the story was going to be because I don't have a whole lot, I needed something to anchor me in the world. And one of the things I love about writing personally as a writer is that I do get to discover the story and get to know the characters as I go along. So that's the reason my process works so well for me. And so if I have that opening scene and I'm interested in these characters and I'm intrigued by this world, then that's enough to kind of push me to keep going. One thing that was very helpful for me when I was getting through this draft, and I've told multiple people this, I write really long first drafts because I'm discovering the world. I had someone read through the draft as I was writing it. This person was entirely a cheerleader. There were no critiques. There were no notes of that sort of variety. It was it was just someone there to be excited about the story. And she was another writer, so I was also excited about her story as well. And so we continued to trade off chapters, and as I was writing for myself and for my characters because I wanted to know what happened next. But having that other person there to say they were also interested really, really helped me get through the process. And then, I kind of just let myself write, explore the story, and then when I'm done, because I personally think the best piece of advice is just to get the first draft done in whatever way you possibly can. If you need to plot your way to get there, great. If you need to just freestyle it, that also works. But get it done, and then once you edit, the story can change so much. And for me, most of my story came to light when I did edit. Because that first draft was so big, I like to think of it as this expansive map. But then when you're presenting the story to a reader, the reader doesn't necessarily want to see all of the meandering plot lines. They don't want to see every single location on the map. They just want the path that will take them, to the ending of the story, the clearest path. So I found that during edits. And I think a lot of people, I've spoken to other writers and aspiring writers, but also really established writers who always run into this problem. But I think we put so much pressure on ourselves in edits to make the story good immediately. But I think you don't need to do that. I definitely did not do that. I edited this story for a very long time, and I did multiple rounds of edits to make sure that it, matched the vision in my head. And I think it's okay to take that time. I think very often there's this pressure of, I need to get this book done. I need to query it. I need to get it out there in the world. But the most important thing at the end of the day is that, the story on the page matches what you have in your head. So it's okay to take the time.
Yeah, I love that, because that's there are two things that I think about and anchor myself on, because I really hate first drafts. I find them painful. It's so hard. But the first is that I wish I could remember the source of this quote. I read it on a writing blog years ago, and it was that the first draft is gathering sand, and the edits are where you build your sandcastle. Mm-hmm. So you're just bringing all your thoughts together in one place, and they can be as messy as they want to be. And then we'll make it pretty later. And then the second piece that I think about all the time is the great thing about writing a novel is you kind of get as many drafts as you want. Yep. So, even if it takes, I think among Thieves, I think the version that is on the bookshelves right now is, I think, draft 18. Wow. So, sometimes it takes a minute to get it there.
A couple of years.
Yeah, just, 6 years, it's fine.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah. Time.
But yeah, just take your time. And that's when I do, especially when I talk to schools and students and stuff, it's there is sometimes this anxiety and this sense that you want to push it out there. You want to get a book out there immediately. And I agree, take your time, be patient, because once it's out there, you can't touch it. Mm-hmm. So make sure that you're happy with what you're putting out there.
And one of my last questions before you guys can plug, because I want to know when the next books are coming out, because I'm stressed, clearly very stressed. It's one thing. Anyway, you guys layer each chapter of your book is a different character's perspective. Which character did you wish you could just slide in one or two more chapters just to get in their last two thoughts? Because I saw what you did at the epilogue. You put in Clem at the end. I saw that. Sneaky.
Yeah, well, I always say, and I say she's my secret favorite, but I've said it 30 times, so it's not a secret anymore. Nash is my secret, not so secret favorite. I feel like that's because of all my characters. Nash is the one I want to go get a beer with, right? I feel like she's the least likely to stab me. Sure. It feels like fun. I mean, least likely, not impossible.
Okay, I'll give you that.
But yeah, I wish I would have had the opportunity to sneak some more of Nash into the pages of Among Thieves, but there will be opportunity for more Nash later.
Yes, because I really wanted to hear more from Nash, especially with the little pops of coming up about her sister and looking for her sister. And it's okay, are we finding? Okay, now are we I need you to have closure.
And it's such a great teaser, and you're buy book 2, find out more. I'm actually very happy, I think, with the amount of each character that, appears in the Stardust Thief. I have 3 perspectives. Luli, who's the midnight merchant, the black seller, the black market seller. Mazen, who is, the cowardly prince.
The precious cinnamon roll. Precious cinnamon roll. Mm-hmm.
And Aisha, who is, this sort of vengeance incarnate.
Like Rya's like second cousin kind of stuff.
Yeah. They would absolutely murder each other.
They would stab each other.
Oh,
but so I'm very happy, I think, with how all of their perspectives balanced out. I do have to say, balancing the perspectives was one of the hardest things for me to do as a writer, trying to figure out, what needed to happen through each character's perspective. And also, sometimes I would feel like, oh, well, this is probably a better Luli chapter, but oh no, I've already had 2 Luli chapters. Is this too much Luli? Like, are people gonna get sick of her?
Never too much Luli.
But I ended up adding a lot more Aisha in the story, which I'm very happy about.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like through every single round of edits, I added more and more of her, so she became more and more involved in the story. To the point where I look back at my first draft, and her chapters are, she's does not have a lot of chapters in the first draft, and it's barely recognizable to me. I'm like, I can never believe that she was such a small part of the story to start with. But then it just goes to show you how much things can change in edits.
No, I get that, because I really, of all the characters, I kind of started looking forward to when she was going to come up, because I knew something was up with her. It was like, I don't know what it is, but I will figure this out. And then once I figured, I was like, I knew I didn't like it. It's like, I had my eye on you the whole time.
Like, I knew there was a secret there somewhere.
Exactly. So I was happy to see more of her after the fact, and her pairing up with Mazen. Again, I'm trying so hard not to tell, but it was nice to see the changes that were happening in her. It was nice to see. It's not like she wasn't human, but it was nice to see some of the humanity coming back to her because of him, and her thinking about him and worried about him because he could not defend himself whatsoever.
He tries his best.
He does. Okay, so for the last bit, let's plug, when are your next books coming out? Where can the lovely people find you on social media?
You want to start?
Sure. Okay, perfect. So the first book in the duology, it's going to be a 2-book series. Among Thieves is out right now. It's available.
Her debut book.
Yes, my firstborn book baby. And the sequel is called Thick as Thieves, and it will be coming out tentatively slated for next summer, so summer 2023, but it's definitely coming. And then if you guys want to find me on social media, anywhere, I'm across all the platforms, so Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook.
You have
everything.
TikTok?
I got TikTok. I'm masquerading as a Gen Z.
Oh my God.
But yes, at M.J. Kuhn Books, Kuhn, and it's just all one word. That's where I am on everything. So.
And so my first book in the Sansi trilogy is called The Stardust Thief, available now. The second book in the trilogy is called The Ashfire King. That one right now is slated for fall 2023, so fingers crossed we can keep that date. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Chelsea Abdullah. So that's CHELSABDULLAH.
So no TikTok?
No TikTok.
Can we convince you to get a TikTok?
We'll bring you over.
To the dark side, to the filters, to the songs.
Maybe
Please.
someday.
You mean when we get backstage? I'm low-key encouraging this. So awesome. Since we have 1 minute left, is it okay to start the... Okay, cool. So if you guys have any questions and answers for our lovely authors, please come up to the mic. And if not, we can just keep talking. It all works out with me. Yes! Yes!
Hi, I'm Molly. Thank you so much for such a wonderful talk. I have just bought your 2 books, so I was thankful for no spoilers. So I had a question about your writing process. So when you're writing fantasy, what is your process in creating new mythos and new worlds while still honoring the legends and cultures that inspire you in our world?
That's a great
That
question.
was a great one.
Right?
Thank you for being the first question.
I know, right? I feel like you should start because it's so rooted in it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think, so for me, when I set out to write The Stardust Thief, I wanted to write something that was a love letter to all the oral stories that I'd grown up with. But I also wanted to give myself that distance to write in a fantasy world. So I think for me, a lot of the stories that you see in The Stardust Thief, they're sort of echoes of what you will find in our world. You'll see, I think a lot of people have seen the 1001 Night Tale echoes, the King of the 40 Thieves and, the sort of magical lamp from Aladdin. So I think you'll see the roots of those stories, sort of the concepts, but then the way they're played with in the world changes. And I think for me, because I kind of start off with, again, like big concepts, so I had the idea of, okay, well, I want to write something that is a love letter to these stories. What are the stories that come to mind for me? And so I had these stories in mind, and as I wrote the world, I kind of let those stories weave their way into the world naturally. So I think for me, I sort of start big concept, and then just let myself explore that concept as I'm writing. And then, I think also the ways in which those stories are incorporated change depending on the story as well. There's one scene in the story where a character is telling a bunch of stories, and it's, for me, it's a very heartfelt scene because they're stories that I heard growing up in Kuwait, and so those stories are a little bit, I want to say, closer to what you would see in our reality, and that's because sort of the function of the scene is very different. So I guess for me, again, because I'm a pantser, I just kind of wing it. I have these concepts and these stories that I would like to play with, and then I just see how they flourish on the page naturally.
I need to get you a vinyl pin of that. I'm a pantser.
I'm a discovery writer.
Let that be a shirt, please.
Probably, if we look on the internet, I'm sure. Somewhere on Etsy.
See, I knew I liked you guys.
Yeah, I don't use as much direct mythology, or at least not in Among Thieves. More so what I'm kind of tying to our reality is I'll base the different locations in my stories off of a real world location, at least in the sense of climate, or, so I'll do a lot of research on, the Kingdom of Dresdal is very loosely based on Ireland, right? So you'll look and you'll see what kinds of crops are there, and it's silly little details, but it also, to me, just makes me feel much more grounded in the fictional world because it will inform what people are wearing. It's going to inform what they're eating, and things like that just you might barely even notice as you're reading through the book, but it just makes it feel a lot more grounded, at least to me as the person writing it. So yeah, it was a really good question.
Awesome. I know, I love that question. Any others? Welcome, thank you. Hi.
Hi. So my question is kind of an overarching question of when you were writing these stories and coming up with all these characters, what was your main hope for with what the readers would be taking away from your respective stories?
Ooh, you took a question from my notes. I like you.
You guys are on the same wavelength. I love it.
know. It's a book reader thing.
So for me, I think because this story was very personal to me when I started writing it. I wrote it shortly after I left Kuwait to go to university, and so, I was just feeling, I was missing home. And so for me, it was very nostalgic when I wrote the story. And I think it was only during edits that I started to think, oh, well, maybe other people would enjoy this story as well. Maybe I should give this querying thing a go. And I think, I don't know if I have any specific hopes. I would say maybe that it makes people more thoughtful about the way stories function in our world, the value of stories. The idea that stories can literally come from anywhere. I think, and I even just thinking about readership nowadays, and some people saying, oh, I don't really read stories anymore. but they experience stories in different ways. You know, I think even when we tell each other about how our days went, we're telling each other stories. And you know, I thought a lot about that because I was talking about oral storytelling. And so whenever people say, oh, you know, we don't really do that anymore, we don't tell these stories, we tell each other stories every day. So, you know, I think that's something I would love people to get out of it. And, you know, I'm sort of thinking about this in retrospect. And I think another thing that's really meaningful for me is when I have, you know, readers who are from the Swana region, when they reach out to me and say they saw some kind of echoes of their culture or their heritage in the story. And, you know, that meant something to them in some way. That is also very meaningful to me. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm very glad to hear, you know, when readers reach out to me and they say they got anything from the story, you know, whether it's the themes, whether, you know, they fell in love with the characters or the story felt like a sanctuary to them, all of those things are meaningful to me. And I think they're magical because I didn't anticipate what it would mean to readers.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, for Among Thieves, I've talked a little bit about, you know, themes of redemption and things like that, but I also just, my main goal is I want readers to just have a really great time reading Among Thieves. It's designed to be funny. It's designed to be like a quick read that you can just hammer out because I want it to be that like addicting, fun read that you can stay up till 2 in the morning or knock out on a weekend. Like that's a lot of the kinds of books I love to read are like that. And so I wanted to give that experience to readers. I also agree though that if a reader gets anything out of it, I'm beyond honored. I did have one reader reach out and tell me that they had been, you know, going through a really hard time and that reading Among Thieves was the first time they'd laughed and felt like themselves in months. And I literally teared up that day. Like, you know, because that's what I wanted to do is just give someone a fun experience in the form of a book.
Such is the power of your banter.
Exactly.
My sassy characters.
I wanted to do an awe thing, but I hit the mic and apologies. Because I felt the same way with both of your books. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, there was a point I didn't like both of you. I almost can remember the chapter for you, Chelsea. I'll probably tell you backstage, but I can almost remember where it's just like, like everything drained out of me because everything got too real.
I know exactly the moment you're talking about.
It was the trauma and then the sweet cinnamon roll, his heart broke, and I'm like, the little soft, subtle, like, So yes, any others? Please come up. We are accepted. Yay!
Hi, so you mentioned querying your book and, you know, this is both of your debut books and your writing process for something that you're planning to query is totally different from something that's on contract. So I was just wondering how your writing processes and character interview process would change when you're writing the sequel to that versus the first book.
Thank you.
Another great question.
Yes, they're coming with the good stuff.
Right? So I have like a bit of I don't know if it's an advantage or something. I have not had to like experience the pressure of writing a book on contract yet. Just because of how things worked out with the timing. Among Thieves was pushed back a full calendar year because it was supposed to come out in fall of 2020 when everything was horrible. And, you know, so since it got pushed back so far, I had so much time to work on the sequel and just, you know, do my little playground of work. But I'll let you know how it goes when we get there, because I've heard it's not fun.
She's heard from me.
Feeling.
Yeah, I had heard horror stories about second books, and now I understand why. It took me a long time to write The Stardust Thief. You know, I worked on it, I think, 3+ years. I really just gave myself time to sink in the world. Writing a book on deadline has been a harrowing experience. It's been a great way to push my craft in different directions. So one thing that I used to never do, or one thing that I, you know, always did, I guess, was I wrote chronologically. So if I was stuck on a scene I let myself take 2-3 weeks. You know, I think there was even one scene I just sat on it for 3 months because I had no idea what I was doing. Now when I'm stuck on a scene, I will scene hop, which I have never done before. It's helpful to have multiple perspectives in that case, just because, you know, if I'm really stuck on one character's, you know, plot line, then I can just make my way to another character's plot and kind of, you know, take a little break, I guess, but it's not really a break because I still have to write words. But I think that's been the biggest change for me, is that in order to stay productive, in order to keep writing and, like, you know, trying to stay on deadline, I've, you know, had to hop around in the story a little bit more. And I mean, you know, I feel like the process has changed because of it. And also, like, the nature of the storytelling is different as well. You know, the way I have to comb back and edit is different. But it's also been an exciting experience because I'm, you know, experiencing the world and experiencing the timeline in a different way. So yes, interesting, but also difficult. A difficult thing to get used to, for sure.
Difficult. I think it was also 6 years. I only know because I saw your Twitter, because after I finished reading your book and I was still kind of in my feelings, I was like, I have to find her to tweet at her. This is like, tweet at my feelings at like 2:30 in the morning. Because I was totally that person, reading 10 chapters a night, trying to just get through, and it's just like, I don't want to talk to her. I want to be mad. But you guys are lovely. So we have time for a few more questions, if anyone has any, because obviously we love talking. Hello.
Hello. So knowing what you know now, is there any insight or advice you would kind of give your pre-debut author self to kind of make this process easier for them, if you could do that?
Thank you. Another good question.
Right? They're all great questions. Oh man, I have a lot of advice for my previous self. I think probably the biggest piece of advice regarding like the debut process specifically is to chill out. I am the same. My partner's right there. He knows I'm not a chill person. So, you know, that's not my strong suit, is chilling out. But there is, when you're going through a traditional publishing house, there is just so much that is outside of your control. And there is no way to bring it inside of your control, no matter how much you stress out about it. So I think that, I don't know if I would take that advice from myself, but I would give it. I think that's probably the biggest one for me.
Yeah, I think, I mean, sort of along those lines, just, you know, the idea of knowing that things are going to be outside of your control. It's one of the most incredible things, because everything that happens to the story, you know, how readers pick up on it, you know, what it means to them, those are all things that you can't control. And it's incredible then when, you know, readers reach out to you and tell you how much the story meant to them, or, you know, when you see the book on a shelf. Like, it's one of the most incredible things to know that happened, because, you know, I mean, we're not in control of how the readership picks up the book, if they fall in love with it. So those reactions are incredibly magical. But it's also terrifying, because you go from, you know, working on a story for 5 years and controlling every single thing about it, to suddenly not knowing how it's going to do out in the world. And letting go of that, I think, it's a learning experience. It's something that, for me, like, I had to learn over many months. Because I think once you enter that process, you lose more and more control. And again, it's like really incredible, because you see the book on shelves and you know, like, oh, I didn't do that, but it's kind of amazing that's happening. You know, I wrote the book, but I'm not the one who's putting it out there on the shelf. But I think going into, if I had gone into the process knowing that, and knowing to, like, you know, have these expectations, I might have been able to weather that process a little better.
Awesome. Well, you guys have been lovely. I appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate your books. Throughout the trauma, they gave me warm, fuzzy feelings. So this is my way of saying thank you guys for tuning in to our lovely talk. Again, this is Chelsea Abdullah. This is M.J. Kuhn, the Stardust Thief among Thieves. They're having a signing 1 to 2 p.m., line 11 and line 12. Yes, and their books are definitely coming out. Please, please, please get their books. Definitely get the second book. Follow them. They're amazing. Don't follow them in real life. But thank you guys for coming.
Thank you guys.